guys, Max here, and I've been using the iPhone 13 Pro daily for a couple of months now, and I gotta say, this phone has really impressed me. When I reviewed the iPhone 12 Pro early last year, I came to the conclusion that it isn't quite worth the money, because it was nearly the same phone as the iPhone 12, but if you use any of the upgrades that the 12 Pro brought to the table, you should just bump up to the 12 Pro Max, because a lot of those features are even better on that phone. But this year, the story is flipped, because the iPhone 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max no longer have any differences, and the Pro lineup has gotten some really great upgrades this year. In this video, I'm going to be focusing on how the experience of using this iPhone really is, and if it deserves to be in your pocket. Let's hop into it. Let's first start with the design and feel in your hand. This is a substantial phone, coming in at 204 grams, and coming from earlier iPhone generations, I was really surprised at just how chunky and heavy this phone felt. Over time you get used to it, but that was an immediate standout impression for me. The iPhone 13 Pro has a soft touch back, which feels great and smooth, and the side rails around it are stainless steel, which feels high quality and robust. This design feels distinctly Apple, from the attention to detail to the possibly even over-engineered materials, but it isn't all good. There are a couple pretty nasty places where dust builds up around and even on the camera lenses, which gets annoying. Also, the stainless steel edges attract plenty of fingerprints, which I've found to not be as huge an issue as some people make it out to be, but I've noticed that over time, the back of the phone gathered a lot of subtle fingerprints, which are a little tough to get off. But it's definitely not anywhere near as bad as previous generations' glass iPhones. The speakers on this phone are really good. There are 2 speakers on the bottom and an earpiece up top in the notch, which deliver incredible sound quality, and the video watching experience is really, really good on this phone. The 4 colors this year are silver, graphite, gold, and the new Sierra blue, which is what you've been seeing all throughout this video. If I was on Apple's marketing team naming this iPhone color, I'd probably call it something like storm blue maybe, mostly because the color does give off a bit more of a grayish blue rather than the bright baby blue in the promotional images. But you know, this phone feels pretty premium holding it, and the materials feel pretty pro, which is what you get when you pay the extra $200 over the iPhone 13. The iPhone 13 Pro ships with Apple's flagship iPhone operating system, iOS 15. Since release, Apple has made a lot of improvements, and it's gone from a small upgrade littered with bugs and glitches to a really noticeable upgrade, and yes, much less buggy. Some features you can look out for on iOS 15 are Focus, which is one of my favorite features, which allows you to customize who can and can't send you notifications when you have a focus on. And I explain even more on that in this video, which you can find in the top right corner. The first of 3 major upgrades Apple has made this year is the display. Apple has made some pretty great improvements in the display department, the first of which is a pretty considerable jump in screen brightness of 25% over last year's iPhone 12 Pro. This means the display is even better for use outdoors or in bright environments. The second display improvement is Apple's 20% smaller camera housing at the top of the display. This is actually a pretty noticeable difference, and it gives you just that little bit more screen space and tucks the camera housing out of the way just a little bit more. There are 2 downsides to this change, however, one of which being that the camera housing is slightly taller than it was previously, which means that it cuts into videos in a specific aspect ratio a little bit. It's not a huge deal, as not many videos are in this aspect ratio, but when you are watching a video in 2:1 aspect ratio, it does cut in a little bit, which can be annoying. The second downside here is that while the smaller housing is great, you still don't have the ability to see the battery percentage next to the battery icon in the corner. You still have to swipe down and see it in Control Center. The third improvement Apple has made to the display is the addition of ProMotion high refresh rate. This means that the display refreshes 120 times per second rather than the standard 60, which makes the experience really smooth. Some people notice this kind of thing and others don't, but it undoubtedly makes the experience just that little bit better compared to older iPhones. This is probably the most advertised Pro feature on these iPhones this year, with Apple calling it game-changing. I don't know about game-changing, but this has been a feature for many years on other Android phones. But yeah, on the iPhone, it kind of is game-changing. I'm not going to go too in-depth when it comes to performance and specs because that really isn't something you need to worry about here, but this phone does have Apple's latest A15 chip, which delivers great speed and power efficiency. The integration of Apple's custom silicon and custom software really makes this a wonderful experience. The second of 3 major upgrades Apple has made this year is the battery. Apple claims 1.5 hours more battery life than the iPhone 12 Pro, which is quite a substantial upgrade. I have definitely experienced the improvements promised, and on my usage, which is about 6 hours of screen on time at most, I finished the day with 25 to 30% of battery left, which easily makes it a full day phone and even more for the next day if you can't get a full charge in. Speaking of charging, Apple hasn't upgraded the charging method or speed on this generation, which means it still charges at a pretty slow speed of up to 7.5 watts for wireless charging, 15 watts for MagSafe charging, and 20 watts for wired fast charging. This isn't very fast compared to other phones these days, but you can definitely get a good top-up in a pinch with wired charging. Possibly the biggest upgrade Apple has made this year are those cameras. To get the camera setup out of the way, we have a 3-lens system with a 12 megapixel main camera at 1x, 12 megapixel ultrawide at 0.5x, and 12 megapixel telephoto at 3x. This system gives a 6 times optical zoom range with a 15 times digital zoom range, with the telephoto lens being able to be zoomed all the way to 15 times. Let's start with the main camera, which has an f1.5 aperture, meaning it lets in a lot of light, especially for night mode. The photos that come out of this phone are crisp, bright, and vibrant. The larger aperture means a naturally blurrier background, which makes these photos look even more like they were taken with a pro camera. This also has Apple's sensor shift stabilization, which was introduced for the first time last year on the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Next, the ultra-wide has gotten a huge upgrade in aperture, going from the previous f2.2 to now f1.8. This means it lets in way more light, and the photos have gotten to be really good quality. It still has the really wide 120-degree field of view, and it's better than ever. Finally, the telephoto lens. On the telephoto, it's an f2.8 aperture at 77mm, so I think it's a really good focal length, and this lens has really surprised me. It has amazing quality, and the 3x zoom range makes the photos look really, really high quality. In addition, on this huge camera bump, there's a LiDAR scanner, which improves autofocus, a True Tone flash, and stereo mic. A new feature that was introduced this year is photographic styles, which uses advanced image processing to apply effects or filters to your photos straight out of the camera, so you can get your signature look. I landed on rich contrast as my favorite style, and it really gives that deep, contrasty look. The other options are vibrant, warm, and cool, which do exactly what you'd expect. Vibrant is a more punchy, bright style, warm is what it sounds like, a warmer style, and cool is, once again, just what it sounds like, a cooler style. You can also customize the style a little bit to tune it to just the way you like it, and it stays on until you turn it off, so all your photos look the same unless you intentionally turn it off. This definitely contributes to why the photos from this phone look so good, but it's an important point to make that you can't actually change or edit the photographic style after you've taken the photo, so no customizing it afterwards. It looks the way it looks out of camera, and that's how it'll be forever. I hope the ability to customize it after comes in an update soon, because it's a pretty cool feature, and I'm interested to see how this processing evolves in the future. There are 2 big video features being pushed this year by Apple, the first of which is cinematic video, which, in the simplest terms, is portrait mode, just in video form. It imitates the blurry background look found on professional cameras with large sensors and lenses. I'm even using it right now. But obviously it's a little different on an iPhone because it's a tiny sensor without the ability to get a depth effect naturally, which is why they introduced portrait mode for photos, which blurs the background behind the subject. Now, that capability comes to videos, adding a new upgrade specially for video. For one, you can change the focus on the subject while filming, which is a technique called rack focus, and you can even change the focus on the subject afterwards in the Photos app, and even more, you can change the focus on the subject afterwards in Final Cut Pro 2 with a brand new update which enables this feature. All of this sounds great, but in the real world, this feature is for sure still in its infancy, and visibly. It does a great job of detecting subjects, but not a great job of cleanly cutting them out. The edges are just a little bit feathered and look a little bit cheaply done. So I'd love to see this feature improved more, and there are a couple of drawbacks which really suck for this feature. Number one, on the Pro models, the LiDAR scanner, which is supposed to improve subject detection and AR in portrait mode, which it has, isn't even being used for cinematic mode, meaning it's just the iPhone's wonky camera detection of subjects, which is probably partly why it isn't great in its current state. And secondly, this feature is capped out at 1080p 30 frames per second for some reason. This means that even if you want to get that film style look, you won't be getting the most out of this camera system, since you can't use the LiDAR scanner and you can't shoot in 4K. Fingers crossed these drawbacks are history soon. The second new video feature is ProRes video on the Pro lineup. Apple ProRes is a well-known and high-quality video codec that's finally on the iPhone. In a recent software update, this has been added, which means that you can get that crisp ProRes video right out of the built-in camera app. A big drawback is that on the base storage iPhones at 128 gigabytes, ProRes is capped at 1080p because of how large the file size is. So if you're going to be buying an iPhone for the promise of incredible video quality, make sure to get the 256 or more. From early tests, it's looked like this has really improved video on these phones, but the file size is certified monster, so that's something to keep in mind. So that's everything to know about the iPhone 13 Pro. This phone is definitely tailored towards a professional audience, and the features here scream that. So if you'd use that and notice the improved display and better camera system, then the iPhone 13 Pro is for you. But if you don't really care about the camera too much and you just use it for taking pictures occasionally, then the upgrades of this camera system aren't worth it. At the end of the day, it all comes down to what you know you'll use your phone for, and the final decision rests on that. Anyway, that's been it. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.